Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our weekly Hebrew word study. We are in 1 Samuel chapter 18, and we're looking at verse 12, which you should be able to see on your screen right now. And again, there's just a couple words I want to point out that just help increase our understanding of um, first of all, the relationship between David and Saul, and also the relationship between David and God. And so when we look at verse 12, we see the Hebrew words Vayira Shaul Mil Lifnei. Okay, and the word I want to look at here is Lifnei. It has a mem in front of it. It's Hebrew word 6440. And we see this translated as Saul was afraid of David. But this word lifnei is, to me, a very um, interesting word for helping me understand how our relationship with God and with people is viewed from a biblical perspective. Because the word, if you open it up by clicking on it, it comes from the word panim or panei, which stands for the word of face. So in the Hebrew, they don't talk about being with someone or encountering someone. They look at as when people, remember, Hebrew is a relationship based language. It's not a scientific based language. It's based on relationships. And so when two people have a relationship, the only way that relationship can exist is for them to be face to face. And so you will find this word lifnei used throughout the scriptures as to how people are relating to one another, but also in how people relate to God. And so every time you'll see that they did something before God, it may be translated as before or of, but it's really lifnei, which means the face of God. And it is many times translated in the presence of. And this is really beautiful when you think of how we try to think of how we relate to God. You know, obviously he doesn't have a face because God is spirit. And so but yet in a relationship, it's very hard for us to base any relationship on something that's unseen um, in such a way. And of course, mankind has had that problem from day one of trying to relate to God as an unseen being. And so this word lifnei again packs a lot of emphasis here in how people have tried to see the face of God, have tried to relate to God's face. And so that's where this is just so beautiful to see that even God's word talks about that when we relate to God, we think of his face. We think of being in his presence, which is seeing his face, which is looking into his eyes, which is reading the facial expressions, which we know are so important to obtaining a correct understanding of what's really happening. Noticing that a lot as, of course, now COVID winds down and many of us are able to take our masks off, and the masks have always hidden our expressions. It was difficult to tell, was a person smiling? Was a person angry? What was their mood? What was their, how were they reacting? How were they feeling? Because we're so used to looking into their face and not only using the words that they speak, but looking to see if the words are matching the facial expressions or gaining an understanding of that person just by looking into their face, whether they're saying a word or not saying any words. And so trying to take that same process that we use every day dealing with each other and putting it in a place of how can we relate to God, because we can't see his face, but he can see ours and he sees our expressions. And trying to put this in a spiritual realm is how can I, in my prayer life, in my relationship with God, be in the presence of mil lifnei, or in the face of God. And so I wanted to leave that little thought with you as we look at this expression used here between David and Saul, that Saul was afraid of the presence or to look at the face of David. And what was it that was causing him such concern? It was because God, and of course, English translations would have it Lord, probably capitalized with all capital letters, but the Hebrew again gives us just a beautiful way to look a little bit more intimately into it and see that the tetragrammaton, or the Yud-He Vav-He, the four letters, mostly translated as Yahweh, is used here to connotate the merciful, intimate relationship with God, that name that's used. And so he saw that David had that relationship. And as we go down to the rest of verse 12, we see Imo, Umeim, Shaul, Sar. And again, emphasizing that that intimate relationship with God is signified by the tetragrammaton, or the name Yahweh, was lacking in Saul's life. It had left Saul. And in fact, we look at these words, Imo and Umeim have both the same number of 5973, because they really mean with him, with him. And the Hebrew commentators in their translations would have translated this as saying that the Lord had been removed from him, and the presence of the Lord was removed from him. And the fact that it's repeated twice just adds a little bit of extra emphasis there, that Yahweh was from him, taken from him, not with him any longer. It departed. And so we get to verse 13, Vaisirehu Shaul Me'imo. Again, here we see this word, it's translated as presence, but it just really means that he wasn't with him anymore. It really doesn't relate in the same way that Lifnei does. And Vaisimehu made him Lo Sa'elef, put him captain over 1,000. The word elef is a common word for numbers. And Vayetse, Vayavo Lifnei, you see that word again show up here, Lifnei Ha'am. And this is, again, is very interesting, that this word is talking about David being in the face of, or in the presence of, the people, and how important this was for David. It also gives us an indication that Saul was not going out, not interacting within the people, with the people. They were not seeing his countenance, they were not seeing his face, but they were seeing David's. And it endeared the people to David. They could see God's presence in him, just like Saul saw God's presence, and that had a big effect on them. There's a song that just going through my mind that I like to use as a prayer before I go and do any interaction, any ministry work, and the words go, let them see you in me, let them hear you when I speak, let them feel you when I sing, let them see you in me. Obviously meaning God's presence within me. And I relate to that in this song so much, in this verse, that this song relates in such a way, because it's something that obviously David did in his relationship with God. And I pray for it in my life, as I'm sure most of you pray for it in your life. So hope you were strengthened and encouraged in this little study today. And may God bless you as you continue to make God's word priority in your life. Maybe even learn a little bit of Hebrew, but at least to know that it's there, and gain a little bit of insight from the beautiful language that God has given us to study. So God bless you, and have yourself a wonderful rest of the week. Bye-bye.